Welcome back. All right, we're going to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets eliminated in the first round again. And so, as I've been doing with teams that got eliminated from the playoffs, I'm going to take a look at Winnipeg. A little different than how I've looked at other teams because it feels like Winnipeg's in a bit of a different situation. We've talked about Toronto and the dire situation Toronto's in because they have this core and it just can't get them over the top. Winnipeg's in a very similar situation. This core looks great during the regular season, and then in the playoffs, they just get kind of manhandled and pushed to the side. It's happened in back to back seasons, and the year before that, they didn't make the playoffs at all. Now, I have been trying to do something different with each team, but in the case of this team, like a couple of others, going back to 2017, 2018, and looking at their history from then until now is the best way to get that picture. I don't think that's going to be the case with every team, but again, that's where we're at with Winnipeg. I know that's what I did with Vegas. There's at least one other I've done that with. So 82 games played in 2017, 2018, a record of 52, 20, and 10, 114 points. That was a great year for the Winnipeg Jets, and this was a team that was seen as a future Stanley Cup champion. They lost in the conference final against Vegas in 5 games, but they looked good at times in that series. Once Vegas got rolling, they didn't have an answer, but they got to the conference final, right? Winnipeg gets to a Final Four. Since then, there hasn't really been a lot of success. So 2018, 2019, the record drops. They end up with 99 points that year, a record of 47, 30, and 5. They lost in the first round to eventual Stanley Cup champion, St. Louis. That was a 6-game series where they didn't win a game at home, and nobody won a game at home until Game 6 by St. Louis at home. And that's the storyline we're going to look at with the Winnipeg Jets in this video as well, because I do think it's something that's important to look at. 2019-2020, at the time of the pause, 71 games played, a record of 37, 28, and 6, 80 points. They lost the qualifying round against Calgary 3-1. Calgary manhandled them. They just came out and just basically bullied them off the ice in the bubble, and so yeah, they weren't there that long. 2020, 2021, 56 game schedule, right? 30, 23, and 3 record, 63 points. They swept the first round against Edmonton. Then they get into the second round against Montreal. Montreal, coming out of a 7-game series, they still have the energy to sweep Winnipeg after the 7-game marathon they had against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So for Winnipeg, they went through a series where against Edmonton they were underdogs, against Montreal they were favorites. It didn't really matter. And then 2021, 2022, the record 39, 32, and 11, 89 points in 82 games, and no playoffs for them that season. Last year, 82 games, 46, 33, and 5, 95 points, so the points total gets better. They make the playoffs, and they won that first game against Vegas. And for a split second, we were like, maybe Winnipeg can pull this off. Nope, they lost the next 4. This year, 82 games, 52, 24, and 6, 110 points for them. Strong finish to the season, and they won the first game against Colorado, that absolutely bonkers 7-6 score. And Hellbuck's like, I'm good as long as I save one more than the other guy. He didn't do that the rest of the series. They lost the next 4 games against a really loaded Colorado roster. So Winnipeg finds themselves in a position that's not completely dissimilar to the situation the Toronto Maple Leafs find themselves in, just they don't get the amount of scrutiny that Toronto does. So their playoffs since 2018, and I didn't include 2020 because that's in the bubble, so it's not really a home and away situation. It's just weird. But at home, since 2018, they've been 8-13. They do not assert themselves on home ice. I made the joke about the whiteout and how teams come out like, hey, look, even the fans are giving up. Everybody's waving a white flag, and they're even wearing white. But the reality is, whatever Winnipeg's doing on the ice, and I mean the franchise, not the fans. Fans don't have any blame in this. It's not working. They're not asserting themselves at home. They're too easy to beat in Winnipeg, and this has been a problem for years. Away from home, they're 9-11, which honestly isn't awful, considering how long we're looking at here. And if they had a good home record, that away record, well, there'd be more games because they would have got through more rounds. You need to, when you do all that work late in the season for home ice advantage, you've got to make that home ice advantage count. And outside of that win in Game 1, they just didn't. They didn't win Game 2 and they didn't win Game 5. And then on the road, they lost both. So they were 9-9 since 2018 on the road in the playoffs before this season. And 7-11 at home. So, I mean, both of them kind of take a hit this year. But it just tells you that Winnipeg needs to be better at home come playoff time. So their top three scorers are part of the core, right? Mark Scheifele, 74 games, 25 goals, 47 assists, 72 points. Very reliable, right around a point per game every year for Scheifele. Josh Morrissey had a good year. 81 games, 10 goals, 59 assists, 69 points. And Kyle Connor, 65 games, 34 goals, 27 assists, 61 points. So that's a solid top three. And then for the younger players, so 22 and younger that appeared on the roster, you've got Perfetti, 71 games. I wish he was at 71 goals. 71 games, 19 goals, 19 assists, 38 points. So really strong numbers for Perfetti, I thought, anyways. I also thought he should have played in the playoffs. Don't understand him not playing in the playoffs. And as well, defensively, you need goals against Colorado. You need more players that can score. You need to have three scoring lines. Didn't feel like they had that. Chabrikov only played one game, had a goal. Brad Lambert, one assist in the game that he played, and I know there's Jets fans who want to see what he can do at the NHL level. We'll probably find out next season. So Connor Hellebuyck, very likely to win the Vezina Trophy this year with a .921 save percentage. He finished the year 37, 19, and 4, but in the playoffs, .864 save percentage. His playoff save percentage last year was in the .880 range, but for his career, he has a .910 save percentage. Considering that includes this year with the .864, he's been pretty good in the playoffs. It feels like the defense really let them down, and just, I don't know, once Colorado got rolling, it was like the Jets forgot to play hockey. It's not dissimilar from how I felt watching Dallas against Colorado in this round in the first and second game. They get a big lead, and then it's like, all right, we got it. You don't. Start playing hockey again. So they were first in goals against this season, and they went that really long stretch. What was it, 35 games? They didn't allow more than 3 goals in a game, which was great, right? But along the way, I don't know. It just felt like once that streak was done, the team wasn't quite the same. They did finish the season with 8 wins in a row, which pushed them up the power rankings board after 6 losses in a row prior to that. But that shows that if this team was cold, they could be ice cold. But when this team was hot, they were really hard to beat. So the streakiness is something that definitely, I think, Kevin Cheveldayoff needs to figure out in the offseason. How do you make sure you have more of the hot streaks and you get rid of those 6 losses and all those cold streaks? I'm not sure how you do this. This is a team that's good, but are they great? No. So pending unrestricted free agents, Tyler Toffoli came in as a rental. Can't see him coming back. Monahan, similar story there. I don't think Monahan comes back. Wouldn't it be interesting to see Toffoli and Monahan, who played together in Calgary, if they both signed with the same team in the offseason? And why not Utah? So DeMello and Dillon, I think, are the two that are really important for Winnipeg to sign. I did say that the defense got kind of walked by Colorado. If you want to put that on DeMello and Dillon, all right. But I wouldn't. DeMello had a great season. He had an absolutely fantastic season. And if you want to talk about having a trophy for defensive defenseman, Dylan DeMello would have been in the running this year. Colin Miller, Laurent Brossoit, I think re-signing Brossoit and bringing him back is important too. But we'll see, because cap space is going to be tough. Pending restricted free agents, Cole Perfetti, who I don't think is going to get an 8-year extension. I think it's probably going to be a bridge deal, but we'll see. David Gustafson, Logan Stanley, and Ville Heinola. And I think both Stanley and Heinola, maybe they end up on their way out. I think if Heinola was going to be a regular on the Jets' blue line, I think it would have happened by now. Their cap space on July the 1st, $13,352,976. And clearly, if they're going to have cap space left over, and if they're going to re-sign everybody, something has to give. So if they decide they're going to move a contract, which one would they move? It's not going to be Scheifele. $8.5 million cap hit till 2031. Unless they decide that they really want to shake things up. I can't see it being Scheifele. He just signed a long-term extension. I just can't see it. Same with Hellebuyck. Same deal, $8.5 million until 2031. I don't think those two are going anywhere. Kyle Connor, $7.142 million for 2 more seasons, so until 2026. It's an excellent cap hit. Nick Ehlers might be one to watch. $6 million cap hit for 1 more year. Maybe he's the one that ends up getting put out there as a trade target, because a lot of teams would be very interested in Ehlers. At a $6 million cap hit, that's very workable for a lot of teams, and he's due for an extension next year. So there's the possibility that if the Jets are going to move somebody from this core, maybe it's Ehlers. Morrissey, $6.25 million till 2028. Keep in mind, I don't do all the speculation in the draft trade talk. because I find that doesn't age well. Just looking at this core, the one that logically to me would make sense is Ehlers because he's on an expiring contract. Morrissey, $6.25 million till 2028. That contract's a huge bargain. That doesn't go anywhere. Nate Schmidt, $5.95 million for one more year. Schmidt's contract, I don't see anybody taking him at $5.95 million. Maybe if the Jets can work out some retention and maybe throw something in. And I'm saying this if they want to create cap space, right? Pionk, $5.875 million for one more year. Pionk definitely not as effective this year as last year. And so if they decided to trade Pionk this summer, if they decide to work something out, I think that that's something that could potentially make a difference. Because as I said, this is a defense that it just didn't work for them in the playoffs. And if you decide Pionk's the one that has to go so they can get that asset for their blue line, then, go for it. And again, Hellebuck, $8.5 million until 2031. So the core has not been good enough to get them over the top in the playoffs. And there are a few interesting players on the way. You've got Chaz Lucius, center, right? Obviously, Brad Lambert, Shabrikov's right there. Colby Barlow, left winger, who I think was a steal at where they drafted him. And so we'll see if Barlow gets a chance to play. Now, Barlow was, I do believe, seen as a power forward before he was drafted. I really wanted to see one of the top three teams I root for draft him. But going to Winnipeg should be just fine. And then there's Rutger McGroarty, who is right winger or left winger. And he's seen as being a pretty good forward, too. A lot of top six potential. So if McGroarty and Barlow do get added to this group in some way, in some fashion, that might allow them to move a forward out if they feel like they're ready. And again, I feel like Perfetti's ready for top 6 minutes as well. So there are definitely some interesting pieces here. This is a team that when they have those mid-first round draft picks, they seem to hit on them pretty well. So we'll see how things go for Winnipeg with their young guys. But again, Kevin Cheveldayoff also has the job of hiring a new head coach. A lot of rumors about who it might be. And it's interesting that most of the head coaching vacancies we have right now, it's very similar names coming up for almost every team. But, Winnipeg needs to change the narrative a bit. They need to show they're serious about winning. They need to show that being a first-round exit team is not good enough any longer. And they need to get that attendance up. So we'll talk about the attendance side of things because it does feel like it has to be talked about. Winnipeg is a smaller market than everybody else in the NHL. They do not have the corporate backing that a lot of other NHL teams do. Winnipeg is a city. There are some financial issues as well in that the income per capita relatively low. And so there are a lot of things working against Winnipeg, right? And obviously the very public divorces they've had with Dubois and with Trouba, they'll get a lot more attention because there are definitely those in the media that wait for Winnipeg to fail and wait for Winnipeg to, they're going to move. And there's fans that do that too, right? So if a player has a big beef with, say, Toronto or the Rangers or Boston, you're not going to see, they might lose their team. But when it happens with a smaller market team like Winnipeg, you're going to hear, oh man, they can't attract players. We see that with Columbus too. Columbus has plenty of guys on long-term contracts, but as soon as one player says, I don't know if I want to play here, immediately the narrative from the media becomes maybe they can't keep players. So it's not the truth with Winnipeg. Winnipeg really hasn't had a problem. All these guys have signed contracts with this team. Although I always get a kick out of when somebody signs an 8-year contract with the Jets and then immediately somebody will jump in with, well, yeah, but they didn't really have much choice but to sign that 8-year contract because, they were restricted free agent. No, they had a choice. They didn't have to sign an 8-year deal. Anyways, so the season ticket base has shrunk. We'll get back to the attendance side of it. Season ticket base has shrunk 27% in the last 3 years. Obviously, if you're the owner, you need that to stop. You cannot afford to lose more than that. That being said, their owner, David Thompson, at least one of the co-owners of True North, is worth a reported $61.3 billion, according to Forbes. So does he need any work done around the house or anything? Because for $1 million, I'll clean it. Anyway, but yeah, there's been talk about this team's attendance. And of course, co-owner Mark Chipman came out and said, this place we find ourselves in right now, it's not going to work over the long haul. So that was seen as kind of a shot. Come out and support the team or OOL. And I don't think that's what it was meant to convey. That is kind of how it came across. And I think there is some concern about the long-term picture because obviously things aren't getting cheaper. And with fans not showing up in attendance, that's going to negatively impact their bottom line. This is not a team that's been losing money. According to Mark Chipman, they've never lost money since moving to Winnipeg from Atlanta. But there's some concern if they continue to lose those season ticket holders. If they're playing in front of a building of say 11 or 12,000, it's not going to work. And so I think there's genuinely some concern there. And that's where it comes back to Kevin Cheveldayoff. He needs to fix this. He needs to turn this team into a contender to attract fans or figure something else out. So this is going to be a very interesting offseason for the Winnipeg Jets because if they come into next season and if they're a middling team that doesn't make the playoffs, I don't think the attendance gets better. And if they show that maybe we're going to cut some costs here and maybe ship out some contracts and maybe we won't quite be to the cap, that wouldn't work either. So they're in an interesting position. They kind of have to spend to the cap. They have to go for it, and they have to convince their fans that next year's going to be different. And it gets very difficult to convince your fans next year's going to be different if there aren't significant changes to the lineup. So that's the challenge for the general manager on top of finding a new head coach. And I don't think that Rick Bowness was the reason this team lost in the first round last year or this year. I don't think it was on Rick Bowness. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.